Today marks 4 months since I left for California, and since I took the train, tomorrow will actually be 4 months since I arrived at my destination in California, and a lot has changed. I'm going on 2 weeks without medication. It'll be 2 weeks on Saturday, and I'm feeling better and better. I slept really well last night. I'm getting some pretty clear downloads from the universe about what I want to talk about next after I wrap up some of this stuff relating to mental health. And that might still be a theme, but a different theme, and different in one way because I still want to be involved some way, possibly in setting up some kind of respite for people who go into these crises of consciousness. And this morning when I was in the shower, I realized that Sean Blackwell is right. It really is waking up and not bipolar. He says or waking up, bipolar or waking up. And I really saw today, it really hit me that there is this real element of waking up. And oftentimes when we wake up from sleep, actual sleep, there's still some dream elements there, and we remember our dreams. And to me, it's a similar process going on when something like so-called psychosis happens, and there's these dream elements that are there in waking life that no amount of dreaming during sleep could ever resolve. So it's just a more powerful process of the dreaming process. And then it made me realize that the normal waking state is usually half asleep. So no wonder those elements can come in when most of our lives we spend half asleep through the way we've been conditioned to operate based on habits and not actually perceive in the moment. If we're not perceiving in the moment, we're half asleep. We're not actually seeing what's happening and responding to that. We're just responding to our mental commentary, which puts our body on automatic pilot mode, and then we accumulate things that we miss, and since we're not attuned to acting in the moment, sometimes we act in ways and then it's a reaction, and then we have to constantly think about it to work it out because we feel like we messed something up. And then that mulling over process is actually messing things up more because we're not in connection with the next moments after that. So there's really a time delay there. So all of that accumulation can really create this real cloud that can come into one's life, into what's normally thought of as psychosis, but just as a bad nightmare can tend to wake one up out of a sleep. That process can actually be part of the awakening, and I think it is part, at least in some people's experience. I'm not saying that's the only way one really comes to really wake up, but anyways, I sort of really saw that, and it also made me realize that this whole time I could have been talking about books I was reading on transpersonal psychology or spirituality, or different books people have written on so-called madness and what that means alternatively. And I have taken a peek at some of those books a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, and when I first read them I was like, wow, other people see it the way I do, and I'd never read anything like that before. This intuition I had that whole 3.5 years before ever reading a book about alternative views of mental illness, I already had in my heart. So it was already there, and then reading that made me realize, hey, other people see it this way too. And then not having really read anything for a couple of years, I just started my own dialogue with myself to continue that process of self-discovery, because it's one thing to read in a book and agree, but it's another thing to unfold it as writing one's own book, however one does that, by journaling or talking on video or making podcasts or anything that sort of gets that energy out of the system and is a process of seeing something and saying it and keep going with that. And the point is, it's one's own discovery. So something can spark the process of beginning the process of self-discovery, but I feel it's more powerful to see it for oneself. And this morning, I really did connect with that whole waking up aspect that Sean Blackwell talked about, but I hadn't really been talking about it that way to myself. And I think part of the reason is that I was trying to talk myself out of the system, and now that I'm not taking the meds, I see it in a little bit different way and connected more with, wow, this is like waking up. And it's partly because the initial process of 2 months that I went through 6 years ago, before I was ever labeled, it was a waking up process. And then I was labeled and diverted into processing everything according to, oh, you have a mental illness. And so now that that's sort of over again, because I've put myself back on the track of not being medicated and not interpreting it in those ways, since I haven't been interpreting it in those ways for as much for the last 2 weeks, I'm getting the downloads from the universe, I'm feeling more clear, I'm feeling more awake. So how can one feel like one's waking up when one's put on toxic medications that dulls one out? So just by virtue of taking the meds and their effects, it goes from feeling like a process of waking up, and I'm not saying it's that way for everyone, but taking the toxic meds that are dulling, one naturally feels like one has some kind of mental illness because of the way the drugs make a person feel and transform this really painful and chaotic awakening into this dulled out yet painful supposed mental illness. So I talked a lot about how I'm ready for the fact that other energies could come in that could be really scary, like a nightmare waking me up. And I'm not saying I'm ready for it in that I'll be able to go through it successfully, but I'm ready for the fact that that could happen. And just not being on the meds, it feels like that's not true for me anymore, at least at this moment in time. And I feel like I am waking up again, because being on the meds prevents one from feeling like I'm just waking up, I'm becoming more clear, and clarity creates more clarity, and so hopefully the micronutrients can support with this process. And I feel it could be true that they are, because yesterday and the day before I was noticing some things in the English language where somebody was saying the word direction and all I could hear was erection, and somebody was saying my website is blah blah blah.org and I heard orgy. So I was just thinking that there's all these things that just sound kind of vulgar sometimes, and I was noticing that. And usually when I notice that, I'm sort of in the depths of so-called psychosis. So it was interesting to notice it without being in an extreme state. So to me it feels like there can be a noticing without the extreme state versus being in the extreme state and then noticing. And so it feels more subtle. And that's just a small example. I've noticed too that I usually have a runny nose all the time, and I have to wipe the snot out of my nose like 30 times a day, and I think I'm down to maybe more like 5 times a day. So it could have actually been the lithium that was causing this constant post-nasal drip or something. And it was really annoying because if I'm ever cooking with friends, every time that happens I have to wash my hands, and it's just quite distracting and annoying. So that's gotten slightly better. And I talked to Hardy Nutritionals today, and I ordered more of the aminos and the micronutrients, and I also ordered a probiotic product because they have this gut questionnaire that I did, and I scored just on the border of there could be a little problem. So I'll take it for a month and see if that helps, because it's supposed to help with things, quite a few things. But the things that stood out for me were the nasal drip. Maybe it'll help clear up the last bit of that. And stinky armpits, and I think it could be just detoxing as well. My armpits have been stinkier, and I was trying to switch to the Norwex deodorant, which right now I'm just too stinky for that. So I'm back on my sage something smell deodorant, which doesn't work the greatest either. So it's probably detox, but I'm thinking it'd be good to have some probiotics to help with this detoxy phase. And I haven't had any return of that anxiety feeling since the weekend. So it could have been laying in the sun, plus the sprints, plus just being off meds for a week. And so I might actually do some sprints in a day or two, and I'll see if that causes any of that anxiety feeling. And if it does, then I will not do any more sprints. And the other day, this lady emailed me who does holotropic breath work, who I was in conversation with last year, thinking that I might try to do a bit of breath work. And we're just in conversation because it's actually not really indicated for people with a bipolar diagnosis. And every now and then she just reaches out and says, "Hey, how's it going?" And I told her that I tapered off my meds, and she sent me a really good message or tip. And sometimes these tips come through reaching out to someone. And she said the most basic advice at this point is to consciously do the things that support ordinary states of consciousness, unless you have a solid container for the work to go non-ordinary and clear or draw in stronger connection. Some things take you into non-ordinary states and some things ground you. There is no need to do those things that get you non-ordinary if you are on the verge of getting overwhelmed. As Groff says, ordinary states are useful for landing airplanes. Will this ground me in time-space reality for now? I know you know this. My reminder with affection. So that's very nice, and that's interesting because I was participating in a group conversation the other day, and the energy was quite there and palpable, and I felt kind of high on the energy. And somebody else in the conversation later on told me that they went and sort of sat quietly somewhere in nature to maintain the high and get higher. And I was commenting, "Ooh, I gotta come down from that. That was a lot. Eating this burrito was helping, like eating some food and kind of pigging out a bit to bring myself down." So whenever I feel like I'm getting a bit up, I bring myself down. I don't think, "Oh, how am I going to keep feeling up like this?" Because my brain has a natural tendency to go up. So especially now in the transition process, it's important to be aware of that. So today I'm probably going to go to the hot springs, and that's grounding to be in the sulfur water and the minerals and the hot, and then the cold river after, and just do things that help to ground and remember to keep my feet on the ground and put my feet in the grass and on the dirt for earthing and being connected to the earth. I took a little video of some birds, some baby birds in a bird's nest, and they look so old and helpless, yet they're just baby birds and they're really cute. It's kind of hard to discern what they are because it's like this mess of baby birds and the nest, and there wasn't a lot of light, and I didn't want to shine a light in their cute little faces. And the other thing is that a friend of mine came to visit me yesterday for lunch, and we were talking a lot about mental health and peer support because we're both involved, and talking about setting up a meeting for people who are really interested on their own time to just really discuss these possibilities of something like a peer-run organization, getting away from the system and perhaps hopefully creating a respite, and that's so needed. And she shared a story of someone she knows and what that person went through when they went to the hospital, and it was really bad, and some people have a fine time in the hospital in the psych ward, but there's no other option, and there needs to be less invasive options. There's got to be some kind of responsibility towards creating less invasive options for those who could benefit. And so I was just really inspired by the things she had to say. She just naturally is able to come up with so much amazing energy and ideas and points about why this is so important, and it got me a little inspired. And I've been talking so much about getting out of the system and getting away from this kind of support, because I'm afraid if I dip my toe in it, I'll be right back into needing services, because it's so, I feel like my nervous system is so delicate to being pulled into those things, and just seeing people suffering at the hands of the system is something that makes me feel so powerless. It takes away all my power. There's nothing that I can do, and it makes me so weak. And it's something that I've experienced myself. So seeing that happening to someone, even looking at that happening to somebody, makes me feel so weak. I'm right there with them. And I wish I was able to create something that someone could go to really heal and get stronger. And can we go from illness to stillness? Can we go from peer, P-E-E-R, to pure, P-U-R-E? Purely ourselves. And I really wonder if there could be some kind of awakening midwives, people who go to sit and support people who are in extreme states and non-ordinary states of consciousness and are on call to do that, like a home outreach, but not, oh, you have a mental illness, let me give you this pill to make you feel better, but to be able to ground the energy. And maybe that's actually what the Dream Center is. It's a place where people can go to process some of these elements that come into consciousness while awake, that we're not able to process in our dreams. And I really don't think that the process of human dreaming can resolve the world's problems, can resolve the world's collective unconsciousness, the collective psyche. And we're all living in this field. So if people are able to resolve that and have all of that come up and move through, which is personal unconsciousness as well as collective, it's connected, there's no separation between the two. And if people can heal through that, perhaps that will have some kind of effect, and who knows. And we really do need respite. And I feel it's not respite for people with mental illnesses. That's the thing, I wouldn't even want to frame it in that way. It's for people who are being supported to wake up through the nightmare of the past and emerge into whatever. I don't even want to say what it is. I don't even know myself. And this is even something that I might need still, is some kind of respite if something comes up. And will it be created in time? I don't know. And I wonder if others could be trained by Sean Blackwell with the work that he does. He does bipolar breath work, which is specific for people that have the bipolar label. And I'm not even necessarily against the word bipolar. I would change it to omnipolar, because I don't think it's a good, bad, up, down. I think it's a richness that gets turned into a good, bad, up, down by our interpretations of it, of this is bad, this is good. But if we can move through it, it might turn into or transform into some kind of omnipolar richness, a richness that has no pole, that is always fluxing and flowing and creating, and not being reacted to as, oh my god, that was bad, but being able to be with the actual flow of it that's moving us in no direction. And I feel like this movement of these other elements are moving us onto a different timeline of our life that we were unable to resolve. And I sort of saw that for myself, that it puts me back in time to a time that I wasn't able to resolve, and that keeps coming up. And I wonder if I have to go back to it to resolve it, or if I can transform it through some kind of action, moving into altruism. Do I have to heal my own personal timeline, or just be altruistic and contribute to that kind of timeline not happening to someone else, or if it did, participate in creating respite? Do I want to put my energy in that timeline and resolving it, or using that information to inform me what to do? Like, I feel moved to create a respite. I feel moved for certain things because of what has happened, but I don't think going back and revisiting it necessarily will. But when it gets revisited through coming up in my consciousness in this process of map consciousness and all this, and whatever you want to call it, it's informing me what I need to create to maybe help myself in the future, help others now and in the future, and not go back and try and fix that which cannot be fixed. And I don't know if that's true, but I'm going to say that for now, and often what I say to myself changes day by day. So I'm not sure what I'll do when I go back, if I'll participate, but I think the next phase starting on the 20th is something about altruism, and maybe if I can get with that somewhat before I go home, it'll give me some clues. And it's really about wrapping up this conversation. So the wrap up might not be a wrap up plan, but just wrapping up having a mental illness wrap. I have this mental illness wellness recovery action plan, and people can have a wrap plan without having a mental illness. It's something that can be applied to different areas of life, but I talked about before creating a WHAM plan, which could be a wellness, happiness, activity map, or wellness, happiness, altruism map, or whatever. And I kind of want to create it as an altruism map and turn my life into a game, an improv, a creativity of altruistic activity. Whatever that looks like, I don't know. But I feel like only by abiding in that space will it provide protection from this other element that wants to come in and say, what are you doing with your life? Why aren't you helping people? Remember what happened? Remember this, remember that. Remember when you didn't solve this properly at this time? What are you going to do about it now? You can't solve it now, but what can you do to help others? So I feel like talking to myself to map out this altruism, and it's a living thing. It's not something that can be really planned, but getting the nervous system in alignment with that energy of seeing something that can be done to help and doing it. And this is creating some kind of order. It's a different order than the order of acting based on one's thoughts and plans, but the plan, the design of the moment. And I want to read something I wrote for a day that I participated in, sharing a bit of my story. So I wrote a bit of a thing to be an ode to the Clubhouse. And the Clubhouse, in all the stuff I've talked about to myself that is kind of negative towards the system, the Clubhouse is not included in that whatsoever. To me, the Clubhouse saved my life. And it's still part of the mental health system, but it's so different and so amazing that it doesn't feel like it at all. And that could have actually been a little bit of what might have made me feel like, oh yeah, I can work in the mental health system, because the part that I participated in the most was the Clubhouse. And so then getting trained as a peer support worker and working in the actual system, it's completely different. It's paternalistic, it's everything I've talked about. But the Clubhouse is this beacon of light that is part of the system, but usually operates as a nonprofit, so it's largely able to do what it wants to do within reason, but still has to report to the health authority. But it's just so different. And I won't say much because I'll just read the little blurb, and hopefully that'll say a lot. And when I was in my struggle in January, the Clubhouse really acted as a respite for me, be it only a few hours, maybe 4 to 6 hours or something, or maybe a bit longer. And then I was taken to be with my family, and I was able to avoid the hospital just by having that space. And the thing is, when I started to feel distressed, I was actually right beside my parents' house, and I could have gone in to talk to them, but I drove 20 minutes to go to the Clubhouse, and I managed to get myself there. And then it was just a miraculous day, really, and I was still really struggling and distressed, but I was able to be brought to be with my family after being able to process some of it in the safety of that community and the amazing people there who I would give one of my kidneys to if they needed it. So it's just totally different. So none of that applies to Clubhouse, and the Clubhouse is more like a family to me, and I miss them all very much being in California, and I'm hoping that when I go back, I can just, I'm looking forward to being a part of that again, because it doesn't feel like the mental health system at all. And there's been a lot of gifts in my life from going through the mental health system, and one of them is the Clubhouse, and all the people there who have been labeled, or who are so giving to the people who have been labeled, and not because they're saying I'm giving to people with mental illnesses, they just really care about people, and it's about people, and it's about the environment, and it's just so wonderful. So I really have no regrets about anything. I really only am moved to make sure some of this process might be just a little bit easier on people moving forward. But everything that I've gone through, I've learned what I need to learn, and I'm always learning, and I'll keep learning. And I hope when I go back, I can learn that maybe it's possible to create more safety for people. And I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't know how I will continue to live my life if I'm not in service in some big way. Because I've learned so much, I have to give back. So I say I don't want to go back to help the system, but maybe I can help the Clubhouse somehow. I don't know how. Maybe just being there, not because of me, but just that magical place, just being there, maybe something amazing will unfold. And I sort of want to move close to the Clubhouse and see if I can just be there more, but maybe I'll want to be by my family. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. But I want to read this bit here and share it, because I really want to talk more about the positive things, and maybe not talk about all the positive things I experienced, but maybe when I go back, if I'm involved in the Clubhouse in some way, maybe good things will happen if I can have the right perspective and hold the right energy in my heart. I really hope I can. I want to be there and just be positive and helpful and supportive, and help move things in a direction that will help other people even more, and not be angry and carry my anger from my experiences in the system that doesn't include the Clubhouse to the Clubhouse, because there are two completely different worlds. And the one world of the Clubhouse helped save my life, and all of that they did for me and with me and we did together was nearly taken away by the system. And I'm just so glad that the Clubhouse is there, and I'm not sure if I will feel unwelcome in my heart since I'm not really in the system anymore. And I've kind of decided, at least today, that I might not actually tell anyone that I'm off meds for a year and just kind of pretend I still am. And we'll see. I don't know what I'm going to do, because I could easily say, yeah, I'm getting my meds from my GP now. I'm not going to the psychiatrist, and kind of get away with not taking it, or keep going to the psychiatrist and getting the pills but not taking them. But we'll see, because I feel like I'm still so fragile, and I'd be easily warped by people's worries. So even having that conversation and meeting with some resistance and feeling like I have to defend myself is going to lower my energy. And I don't have that energy to waste right now. I have to allow my body to use that extra energy to just continue to heal. And if I waste energy, it's going to be less resilient. If I waste all that spiritual energy and that inner energy, I'm going to be less resilient if other energies come in that are difficult to deal with, and it almost creates an opening for that negative stuff to come in and create a crisis, or a non-ordinary state crisis of some kind. And maybe that's what happened a little bit working in peer support. Just seeing all that decreases my resilience, and I lost my ability to laugh, and I lost all those things that are so energizing. Laughter creates oxytocin and connection and even more social things and elements that we can't measure. And I lost that, so I'm seeing I can't work in the system, but if I go to the Clubhouse, see what happens. I don't know. If nothing happens in terms of creating a respite center or a peer-run organization, then something will still happen. Maybe they can help with certain skills, so something peer-run or a respite can be created, but not necessarily have it as any part of the Clubhouse, because the Clubhouse system is actually meant to be run by the members of the Clubhouse and directed by the members. So in a way, that's part of what I want to see if can happen, is more member direction and really seeing what that looks like. And I have no idea. And they're all such great people that they have always listened, and they will. And if they don't, that just means maybe there's a different place to do that. So it's sort of putting one's feelers out there and seeing how might something be created as a respite or something. I don't know. And I'm not saying I have any right to direct that, or they have a responsibility to respond to some of the things I might want to say. But in all the stuff I've said to myself, I could go back mad and just be like, I don't want any part of mental illness, mental health, anything. Or I can go back to the part that I love and the people that I love and just see what happens. And maybe I'll be given a different direction. So I will read what I wrote about the Clubhouse. They gave me housing first and a second family. They provided a floor under my feet after spending 2 months with my head in the clouds. They provided a bed to sleep in after 2 months of not sleeping in a waking nightmare. They gave me safe space and community, not just to live, but to give back and lend a helping hand. They gave me time to grieve the loss of my former self and to decide to take baby steps towards building a new one. At the Clubhouse, there is 100 people to smile at, say hi to, and laugh with. I went from fear to cheer, hateful to grateful, and from shame to fun and games. They provide options from social enterprise to socializing in a completely self-directed way. The power of the Clubhouse is their people and how we are all equal. Any best practices were invisible, as the best practice of being human showed the way. I never felt pressured, though I was moved by the gentle pressure of love each time my heart was touched. They helped me fix my mind by healing my heart dis-ease. Who knew that weekly trips to the grocery store, young adult dinners and games, and selling cookies at the farmer's market would unfold into the rich life I now find myself in. But the truth is, the very day I was dropped off at the Clubhouse, from my second 6-week psych ward stay, I became a wealthy person. Wealthy in the healing force of community and relationships. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know what a Clubhouse was. I soon realized that it was something I'd never want to get out of. I'm so grateful for them for helping me by not trying to help me at all, and not by seeing me as broken, but as a valued member of the community. Even though for mental health diagnosis there is no natural immunity, I found my resilience in the relationships of my community. I didn't self-stigmatize in part because I was having too much fun. I didn't self-stigmatize because I was never probed about symptoms or diagnosis. I didn't self-stigmatize because I was immediately trusted, given keys to locked doors, and listened to on the suggestion to get a Vitamix for the Clubhouse. It's a co-creative and collaborative place. I once heard the quote, "Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts." And that's by William Bruce Cameron, or Hanging in Einstein's Office. I wrote that in November of last year, and I'm noticing some things in there, and really the community aspect and seeing people to smile at and say hi to and laugh with. These are all things that build oxytocin and bonding between people. And also the theme of fun, which is really important and was really important through the whole time that I participated in the Clubhouse. And it really was part of what created a lot of immunity against any kind of energies coming in, and how people are all equal. There's none of this people who know directing the people who are ill. Being a human being, loving gestures. So I'm super grateful and I'm super fortunate, and I can't wait to see all my friends again and hopefully bring something to give back to all that they have given me. And I don't necessarily think I'll bring all this crazy context that I've created for myself. That was more to create an energy field of sorts to help move me one step outside the system. But it's not necessarily something that I would wish everyone else to believe, but it was something I did for myself to help move me out of the system, and I think it helped. So now that I'm out of the system, it's not about, oh, this is all the context I created and this is what's helpful. No, it's about what energy can I carry and bring, and can I be love, not just give love, and unconditionally, so not even judging the systemic elements that are there, but be in service with some kind of perspective, a peer perspective that has moved outside of that. And maybe I won't even share that I moved outside of taking meds for a while. I don't know. We'll see how it goes, and perhaps I shouldn't until I go back and just sense the flavor of it. And there's still a chance that maybe I won't want to go to the Clubhouse, but maybe I will. I do want to see my friends, so I don't know. It's just this wondering about the energy of fear and the fear of going back to that energy and wanting to be of service in some way. And maybe it's something completely different than mental health. I don't know. I really don't. And maybe it's just random altruism. We shall see. And I wanted to share that because it's positive, and like I said, 95% of my experience in the system has been positive, and 95% of that positive experience was probably at the Clubhouse. So in a way, it's kind of outside the system in my view. I really don't count the Clubhouse as part of the system, even though it is systemically. It is not, in the way that people are and then people treat each other, and that's the difference. And people still treat each other nice. Like, professionals working in the system are kind of nice. They are nice, but it's contrived within the role of their actual particular role. Whereas the Clubhouse, people are just being people, and there's roles, but they're a lot more fluid, and it's relationship first and the role comes second. It's not you're going to meet this person because they have this role. It's you build relationships at the Clubhouse, and then a person might meet with someone who has a particular role to help them with something in particular, but it's people first and then roles. So anyways, I could talk more about this kind of stuff, and maybe I will, and maybe I will when I go back to the Clubhouse and talk more about the amazingness of it. And maybe there'll be stories of more things happening through the Clubhouse, or maybe I'll see that that's not the right place, and it could be the right place because of the relationships there, but it might not be because of the relationships there. there's a thing of wanting to be creative and participate, and then there's also a thing of, if I'm too creative and too outside the box, it might not be the appropriate place. And I understand that, and I would never feel like it has to change. It might not even have the capacity to change to the extent that I would want to have in, say, a peer-run organization, something purely run by peers. But it could be a good start there to actually talk to people, because they're very knowledgeable and they're very kind and they really know what they're talking about and they have amazing hearts. So I'm just talking to myself like usual, and next time I might talk a bit about that article on veronica.org and then share another thing that I wrote and then go on to something else, and then maybe that'll be it for mental health-ish like stuff theme, and I can go on to all the downloads that I've been getting.